Add marker. I don't know. Welcome everyone to the next game in the Shusaku Study Project. This game is one of the... We're still in the very early ages of Shusaku playing, so he's a one-on professional. This is the second or third game we have on record for him. This is a game against Hori Risaburo, who is a two-dan professional. And well, frankly, that's all the introduction I have. I don't have a ton of information on these players. There's someone named Bugcat who often does a lot more of the historical research, and I think at some point he's probably gonna be bringing in some of this information into the games, and then I'll be able to give you background. Some of the games are very important background-wise. They were castle games, and so forth. We're not there yet. So before we get started with the game, I want to actually take a second to thank the contributors to the Shusaku Study Project who got this far, who allowed this to actually exist. And so we have ggCowabunga, we have DE, I don't have a better name for them right now, frozensoul, Itarios, and FireScourge. They're all the people who contributed to this game. So thank you everyone. Much appreciated. This project could not exist without you. All right, let's get this going. This is an even game, because, you know, two-dan professional against one-dan professional. I think maybe, not that I think there's a ton of captures in this game, but might as well favor the capture display. All right. This was also one of the first games where we're getting the hang of what we call the reading section of the analysis, and so we're going to have more variations. So as much as I did prepare for this, and I saw this for, you know, a number of hours over the past month, I may be fumbling slightly. You might not notice, but I might. So this, of course, at this point, top side is the biggest side. Get a standard opening here. Except Shusaku gives us a cross opening. And white agrees on the cross opening with all the direction. So this is a fun setup because all the directions and approaches basically are Mii. The game is completely symmetrical, and all the pincers and Shimari are, you know, gonna be gonna kind of keep the game sort of even, so to speak. Shusaku breaks this by extending on the left side, and his opponent gives a 3-space pincer. This gives room for a base on this side and this side. Oh yeah, right, I have a fan. I can point at things with a fan. It's good practice. Better than a finger. And it keeps C4 and C15 separated. Now, the large pincer only applies light pressure on black, so black can tenuki at this point. And this means that there's, you know, a lot of follow-ups and directions that you could choose. Like black could go right away here with a pressure, with a press, or white go for a Shimari, another approach. Everything is still open. Black chooses a Shimari on the bottom left. So this is an interesting development because normally from a Shimari you want to expand out this way. So this is doing a Shimari that cannot really extend, or possibly will do a smaller extension to pressure this stone, right? But almost definitely this is going to be more like used like a settled base for fighting. Black continues in the other direction, so we're seeing here sort of parallel between what black did, right? Which of course isn't surprising given the board position. And this stone, among other things, works to keep these stones disconnected, right? It puts more space. Like it makes it harder to reach those two stones because those two white stones are in the middle. So it's easier for white to grow as black plays. White is going to emphasize the top territory with these two stones, or at least suggest that he might want to add more stones here. Black's options are going to be to contest the top, play here, right? Extend on the right side or approach here, or add to the left side. right? It's hard to develop the bottom because of this stone and this stone. Like this is a kind of a lower side. It's a smaller side to develop, so it's not as interesting. So black does extend from the Shimari, so he takes a slightly smaller extension because we would like to go as far as this. And back in the days, in maybe even still in Shusaku era, but pre-Shusaku era, they would even go as far as one stone past the Hoshi, the start point. So this ends up being a wing extension from the Shimari, right? And this also makes it's a way of making the right side, the bottom side, bigger again, because of course once you have this wing, if you get a stone here, even if the development itself is less interesting, the strength of the framework is very valuable. So this is a way to ask a question for the future development of the board to white. Are you going to do anything here or here? Because otherwise, if black gets a move, now it's bigger for black. But the right side has the most attention here, right? Because we have these two stones, and this now if black approaches on either side, it's going to be pretty good for black. White plays patiently with this Kusumi. This is a very flexible follow-up from the 3/4 stone. I see this a lot in Dosaku's time. This is one of those moves which, you know, we used to think, we used to believe we had developed the understanding that it was a slow move, and then it turns out the AI likes playing it, so we changed our mind right back. But yeah, this move existed, and this move is at least 300 years old. Here we have the option of, as white, we can go to J17 next, right? Or we can cover at D14, we can go around here. White would be satisfied, honestly, with covering this, even if black can live inside, and getting all that thickness. This would be very good thickness for white to get. Now, at this point, black decides to play over here, which is a very standard move from this Kusumi, especially when you have the 3-space or even sometimes the 2-space extension, the 2-space pincer. You get this kind of a patient way of getting out. It keeps pressure on the other stone, and it's not cuttable, right? Now there's a couple of things here that are worth looking at. One, of course, is today we would consider this, and you would get a very standard kind of follow-up from this, right? Because the pattern that you would look at today would be something like this direction to this, and then white would play here. You would get this and this, and this is actually not a, I said today, but this is not a particularly new pattern. I feel like there's nothing groundbreaking in this particular pattern. But this would be a result where white, of course, gets a large top. It's very interesting to put the stone down and then, like, I want to point with my hand, but the large top, and then this stone here would be weakened. So this would be the problem that you would run into if black has Sente, but black wants to do something probably to reinforce or cover this stone, because otherwise this stone will get out or play over here, and then it'll put some pressure on all the stones. So, where we are in the game right now, yeah, we have this in the game. That's all we have. Now this threatens to come out, but there is a follow-up at B17 to make a base and live, right? Now, so white chooses to come out with this stone, and this is actually the beginning of a large-scale Joseki that was played before. In this game, they kind of go more aggressively on this Joseki, and so it develops into a big contest on the top left side, and you're going to see that. This, of course, gives black these two forcing moves, right? Because white can't afford to give up this stone. In the simplest, again, not perfect on this board because of the pressure on this stone, but a very simple extension possible for black would just be to do this. White would just get the corner, black would just get out, right? It does put a question for this stone, so I understand why white hesitates with the pincer, but this is a local option. So white gets out, black peeps, white connects, of course. Now, at this point, black is going to jump over here. And this is where the old joseki comes in. It's an interesting, weird pattern because you don't necessarily need to use this forcing move to... you don't need to use this forcing move to make the base, but if you have the forcing move, it's a little harder for white to seal. Because... actually, I don't know how true that is, because this weakness remains here. So there's a question about why this is here. Normally, normally if you're gonna make this exchange, it's gonna be to attack at e9 next. To do this, because you wanna... This move is here forever. Right now, this group is okay, right? The group can go to the base or get out. So you would normally want to make this a forcing exchange to extend here, and then you would get a pattern where white would remove the base here, black would get to ask if he can take one this way, and then black would get out, and then white has to do something, right? At this point, this is a bit of a running fight, but black has a better base potential here. Not perfect, but slightly better, and can get out. And of course, this area is much nicer. So having to turn back to make a base, whether it's for white or for black, is going to be yielding tempo, yielding what's kind of losing a step in the rhythm of the fight. So it's tricky to go back and make the base from that perspective. But this is not where this game went. This game went with this base, and then at this point we get into this joseki pattern. And I've seen this in older games as well. And never bump. We turn, and so white makes here white makes a very tight, solid base. So he's not, with this move, white is trying to keep black from having forcing moves that black can use to strengthen this group, right? This group is in fairly bad shape. It's not terrible, but it's almost sealed in, right? The group is almost sealed in, and it can live, but it's not a great thing. It's not great fun to do. All right, black can attack with b10. Now at this point, now that white is settled, we have to figure out. Black does have to figure out what to do with these stones, and ideally, I think black is going to want to use these stones to pressure this string of stones, because that's kind of the only thing on the board that they can do. But they want to absolutely avoid being sealed in. Because if they get sealed in, right, if white gets, I don't know, if white gets these two moves, let's say, then this is a very strong framework for white, right? It's going to be very hard for black to make up that strength on the rest of the board. So, black peeps, which is fairly reasonable. He's going to ask if he can take these stones and transform this into massive strength. And he reinforces this, which is going to be convenient because it's hard for white to jump in and rotate around. So this also makes the white group much heavier. From a tactical perspective, this of course is going to make this jump here much better as well, because it's much harder to cut it. So it's going to be hard for white to step in at like c7 afterwards with this shape. Now so white connects, kind of the only move. Now the framework is getting stronger on the left side, right? And this group is getting quite heavy, the white stones. This group can live, but doesn't want to get sealed. And as we mentioned, it translates into a lot of power on the outside. So black goes up. This is the move we talked about much earlier. It's finally here. This becomes a nice, stronger area. You can sort of understand why black may have waited to play this move to make this more likely or more nicer looking. But now, of course, the downside is this is creating one direction for white to go in, and it is to squeeze this group. Right? Now, the D13 group is very weakened from this. And at this point, if white can seal black in, white will get a ton of power. This ends up being the vital point, from the vital shape point from those 3 stones here. And the knight's move can be cut, but it's going to result in white moving into the middle with this group, which we don't want. So the pattern here for the cut, if you want to look at it, is very simple. You can play here, that's the starting point for the cut. White can ask to resist once. If black is intent on executing this pattern, you're gonna get this. Black can avoid being sealed in this way, but white can capture, and then black comes out. So this is a problem because now this is a string of stones, the black stones that need to still live, but they're still between 2 white groups, whereas these stones are very much out, and they're now pure strength. And that's and white gets a Ponuki towards the center, which is very valuable. So this is not the preferred course of action for black. So black chooses the other path. He's going to go out this way. He's going to disrupt the connection between the white stones, limiting white's strength development, and is going to continue pressure on the white group. Now, the only direction for white here is to drive black towards the top, because he wants to make strength. So he does. You think I left a white stone? I think you were right. This is F11, but yes. Caught it. Thank you. We're getting better at this. Teamwork. If you were looking at the SGF, this wouldn't happen. But right, so we're here. Assuming, let's go back a second just to make this clear. White plays here, black goes in on the other side, and white has one direction, which is go that way, right? Now, the white group is pretty heavy, but it's trying to seal black in, and it's worth noting, of course, that this is an elephant jump. It's also worth noting that I'm not gonna show this, but the clamp didn't work as well. Again, we were talking about this before, right? Until this stone gets added in. White continues. This is the same exchange. This is not exactly, it's basically forced, honestly. Now here, there's a first question that you could look at as white, which is maybe you want to play here and just say, you know what, I want to give you the strength, I want to give you the stones, and I just want to build a ton of strength towards the outside. But this ends up being a massive mistake. Like, it's, according to the AI, there's about 15 points. And largely it's because the uncontested corner is just much too big to give. And white's shape is actually is too thin. It looks pretty strong, but you would end up with this cutting point, a cutting, and then forcing moves that black could use directly to weaken the moyo. So it's just not worth it. So white is forced to choose this direction. And so you keep your stones connected. Black gets to clamp now. Now it works. And you're going to see this pattern come into play. We have right? Now it's very simple. Now the stones are split. And now you see black pressing on the white shape. So white here is going to trade a lot of strength towards the corner. I don't want to show you the complete variation, but this is of course also an option. But this option is weaker for white because it ends up creating a running battle between these stones and these stones and these stones. And it's not exactly where white wants to be on this board, because white has made a bunch of choices to build strength, and transforming this strength into a running battle, again, it's not a massive mistake because it's, 3 points from the AI perspective. It's not huge, but from a pro perspective, it's pretty significant. So what we end up with, and by the way, this variation that I'm not showing you is in the SGF if you want to look at it later. So black pushes here. This is interesting. Should probably, remote. See how hard this is going to be to do. White, of course, is going to block here. And black is going to say, can I Atari? Which actually is not really a question. He's just going to do it. And white is going to say, I would like to fight a ko. And this, by the way, this ko is in fact the reason why it wasn't such a good idea to just block down and give black the corner. Because as much as there are no ko threats in the opening, it means you're able to take a big move somewhere else if you do that. Right? Now, if you were to just connect here, this would absolutely just be the death of those white stones. And again, they're probably going to die anyway because there's no ko threats in the opening. But if you just do this and black gets that, then this is just too good. Because then you end up defending and black gets this. It's just an uncontested, very large corner. The group can live, even though it probably won't. In this particular game. So of course black takes the ko. This was why black needed f12. This one? It would squeeze otherwise. Yes. Sorry, it's from my perspective, you probably don't know why I'm looking here sometimes. So like here's the camera, over here is the laptop where I'm looking at the chat for the most part and the SGF. Over here is the board, and over here is the streaming software. So like I get a nice view of this. But I'm gonna. My eyes are tired. So, ta-da! Anti-eye strain glasses. Also, hi, Pete Waldron. Good to have you in chat. So white is going to take a forcing move here for the local fight. Take f12 and the Atari away. There's a squeeze instead of a ko. Yes. Yeah. Makes sense. You're... Yes, sorry. I was not expecting, like my brain was moved away from this, but yes. Yeah, sorry. So we take this first ko threat and take the ko. Black gets a local threat. right? Because if white takes the ko here, finishes the ko, black plays here and captures. So it's still death. Hang on a second. This is actually very connected. That was a response to this move. I did, Legion, I did. I think I caught it now. I think I caught it like right before you said that. I'm like, this board position doesn't make any sense. Now it does. So, local co-threats. Now, white plays a move on this outside and gets his press. This starts a sort of moyo for white, where you have these stones here that will sketch out a bunch of a lot of territory, although this is not as strong as it seems because these stones are potentially split. There's an important cutting point here, and it's not really a base yet. So this looks a lot bigger than it really is, but it does look like it could begin to get that way. Now, I cannot resist showing you a variation here that the AI actually came up with, which is like really elegant looking, which is a different approach for white. But it turns out white can play a wedge, or in fact a threat from the other side. It turns out to be equivalent as far as pattern, because black ignores and connects. This is just too big. So white gets to extend here. Then black gets this move, and you can sort of think this is probably what white wanted to avoid in the game, because white wanted to build more strength. But as you go in this pattern here, you get to build this way as white. Black gets to extend this way. White presses in the corner, black goes up. White attaches here, the very AI move here to limit this growth and to make this stone, to keep this stone useful, as well as to challenge a bit this position. When black descends, white extends here, black extends here, and I cannot make this up. White plays Tengen next. So this is one of the rare cases of the board position being actually so clean and balanced that the AI variation, the variation the AI comes up with is actually one that as human beings we find pretty pleasing, and I think that's fun. So this is not the way the game went, but it's, you know, it feels like what white was. It feels like what white was looking for. So. So instead of seeing all this, white just presses here directly, and black takes. All right, sorry. White presses here, black takes the ko. I'll just look at the chat and go, "You forgot a black move," and go, "Yeah, I probably forgot a black move." Now, here at this point in the game, black has a large territory lead from the corner, and white is gonna have to use influence and convert this influence into territory to compensate. There's a lot of ways for white to continue after black takes this ko. You can go over here, right? Directionally, you could play on this side. You could attach here, press. You could approach the corner. You could press. You could close here and start to develop the right side, or you could play over here in this triple knight's move sequence to start to really build the moyo. So this would keep the game slightly simpler, I think, in some ways, or at least keep the development more straightforward. White chooses something a little more complicated by going over here. Now, this is the follow-up on the press, so it's very principled in the sense that if you did a co-threat and the opponent ignored it to finish the ko, you follow through on your co-threat. And it basically takes the corner to catch back up the territory balance. There's a ko here that black can make, and I'm going to show you that in this right now. But it's not a good ko for right this second. It's a ko for later on in the game. So the code looks like this. Assuming, you know, black wants to play it, you get this. You get this, 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 and this. And this is the code. And this is an opportunity to live in a corner in code. So at this point on this board position, that is not the right move. I removed the incorrect black stone. No one saw anything. But at this point, with these two stones, the correct place for black to play is the bottom right, because now all of the influence that white has is up here. And so we want to challenge that and impact it as indirectly as possible. So we want to build strength to eventually contest, to be strong enough to contest directly. So black begins here. White gives us a second 3-space pincer, and black presses directly here. Now this press here makes sense in the sense that we want to build, we're asking to build strength in this direction, which would be challenging this stone directly and challenging this indirectly. White is content to follow the ggCowabunga. And this is interesting because this is the ggCowabunga we see today, right? The ggCowabunga we had back in Dosaku's days was much longer. It would involve usually an extension here, and then a press down here, and then the double cut, and then coming back here for the nose hitasuji. But here this is short and sweet. It's just playing the bare minimum moves to build the strength that Shusaku wants to use. At this point, he's going to use these stones now. Oops, and he's going to cap. Now this cap leverages these stones and starts to challenge this. The AI doesn't necessarily think this is the best move, but I think this move is amazing. And it's not, and I don't care what the AI says in this particular move. You're welcome to look at it yourself if you want. I'm not here to just like spit back out what the AI says, even though it may sound like it sometimes. So the pattern here, of course, is continuing to challenge this area. Sometimes AI can be wrong. So the way we're doing the AI analysis on these games is we're putting in 25,000 visits per board position. So we make it pretty unlikely that we're going to get an AI move that was going to be off from a board policy. Black is looking to activate F12. Yep. Maybe damage the white topside in the ensuing fight. It's a very short, small summary. Yeah, I should have mentioned that now. Actually, you're right. We're also trying to activate M12 because if you look, right, these stones are still pretty weak. And if black gets to extend this area here, these stones start to suffer. So here, white is developing the right side, the top right, largely the way black developed the bottom left. Melancholy stones, yeah, basically. So at this point, the game is really beginning to be a game about the challenge of the Moyo boundaries, and where we have something fairly settled here with strength that has some weaknesses but is fairly stable. Then we have a Moyo here that has these weaknesses and something to follow. We have a tiny Moyo here. I'm going to call that a Moyo. And then we have the most undecided area of the board here where black played very quick, very light. And this is a noticeable change of tempo from the way black has been playing, because black played very thick over here and pretty thick here, and literally just didn't play anything here in order to be able to play this. So at this point, with these stones, it's hard for white to surround effectively. So black is now actually able to activate F12. The D11 group is getting quite heavy now. The G15 group is looking pretty heavy because this cut is beginning to hurt, and that makes this group as well heavy as well, because if black gets a forcing move that impacts this, he can use a second forcing move to impact these stones. White gets out by leaning on strength. He defends the weakest group most actively, and he's going to get more space towards the center, and is going to begin a loose trap for these stones. Black plays, at this point, very thick and solid. He keeps white split and keeps the groups heavy. And the threat of the huge quadrant is... White's threat of the huge quadrant is just too big. Another thing to note here is this activates the cuts. White protects the cuts, and these stones are now a fair bit thicker because of it. Black continues putting pressure back on here, reactivating the cuts. And D11 is getting weaker, but still has a way out through with the F9 stone, which is where white is playing, because against you have to defend the weakest group, right? So he defends actively, and he's also going to do this to reduce black's potential. Black is going to defend in a way that maintains the most potential territory, because the shape isn't super important right now. When white plays to connect, black plays thick, right? And now white just defends the cut entirely. Black plays now on this side to strengthen the 4 weak stones. He's going to threaten the cut at H15 in the capture, right? Because now if he gets to play here, it doesn't really matter. These stones are dead, because either black can play here or black can play here. And if white plays one, black plays the other, right? So he's beginning to worry about reducing this area to keep the territory balanced. So the fight, like P. Waldron was saying, really started because now these stones have a place to go, however thin it is, right? These very, very thin stones here are very hard to cut because white needs time, because black is making big threats because those stones are here. White asks if he can reduce this area, which is fair. But what that means is he is giving up these stones, or he's telling black that it's okay if black takes them, right? He's saying, my follow-up here is bigger. So black says, okay, do you want to show me? I have questions. I don't understand what you're trying to do here. So white follows through and plays here. Now, of course, white is saying that capturing these stones here is equivalent to capturing these stones. Black can live with C7, but white might turn into the corner. So, like here, black can live by playing here. Sorry, here. I have the SGF and I saw this wrong, and I pointed at the wrong stone intersection on the board. But if black takes the time to live here, white might just go into the corner, so it's not a fantastic result. So black instead goes for something slightly more aggressive. And this sequence here is basically the only move. The AI goes, yep, this is what you do. That's the biggest thing on the board. White turns here. Now white is challenging the corner. He would like to have a stake in the bottom as well, because if he cuts these 2 stones, this stone gets reactivated, right? Or more directly. So white cuts. White exchanges here. Now here, locally, white and black don't have 2 eyes yet, right? And so in the contest, black cuts. This is what Shusaku does. According to the AI, this is a 5-point mistake. In this particular case, it's better to not. In this particular case, it was better to peep here. Because this is what you end up with as far as variation. White needs to connect. And then you sort of have two options. One of them could just be to play solid. Oh, sorry, one just play here, kind of have a loose net around the board position, which is fine. The other one would be to play more solid this way. White would want to come out on this side, and black gets out here. White would press. Now you'll see here this group is getting out and is trying to attack these stones at the same time. And the shape that you get as they protect and white turns around to attack this, you get black needs to connect back out, so he connects this group here. This forces white to come back around to the corner. Black would descend. White would attack the shape here. Black connects. White lives in the corner, and then black would attach down here. So like this entire exchange here would be interesting because besides the resolving of the Aji here, you see that the running battle continues and black gets to move out his stones pretty naturally. Right? It's very patient. He's not trying to rush too fast, but you see the bottom is very heavily contested. It's going to be black is much stronger, but white is already very low. So what we're really doing is going to be fighting between these stones that don't yet have two eyes and want to get out and have kind of a way out. These stones that are pretty thick, but they're pretty surrounded, right? So like black has a moving gote to make them strong, but the moving gote would lose the tempo in the fight. And all these white stones that want to get out and swallow all of this and leverage that cut to make a lot of strength and then make black's position collapse. So this would be where it would be better to play this. But that's not where we went. I need to undo a couple of things, and this is always the exercise in did I remove all the stones? I think in this case I'm gonna do a sanity check, but I think this is all the stones. We got 5 here, 3 here, 2, a shredded nice move. This is the hardest part, I imagine. It's the part that requires the most focus over time. But it's also good practice because you get to fix the board position in your mind and kind of work on the variations. So to some extent, it's actually good visualizing and reading practice. All right, so white is going to play here. Now white is going to get ice space, and both players are just going to live. So this is just the simplest result. So white extends here. Black plays here. And white jumps out here. Now, white's living condition is better. Black still has F4 over here, which we saw in the variation, to bother the corner. But there's no really bottom side profit to be made here. Like white has effectively negated this. And these stones are now fairly surrounded. It's a very large surround, but because of this cut, it's hard to say that they're connected. And so black is going to have to start worrying about doing something with these stones at some point. Now, popping out here for white is aiming at the E3 stone, because it would be very nice to cut that stone off. That would transform this area significantly. Oop, there's a typo in the SGF. I'll have to fix that. I'll fix it right now. I'm gonna have to put a change log in his SGFs too. They're gonna be public domain. People will keep on working on them for years after this. Right, so this prevents black from forcing white into poor shape. So if I make a change here and I say that, for instance, white passes, or tenukis, if you remove that, right? Black can press here, and I'm going to just show like a simple variation because it's worth looking at. You're just going to get a quick look at the board if visualizing is not something you're very good at. If white plays aggressively this way, you get a bunch of weaknesses. This one, and this one. So it's tricky for white to play this way because this group is not super happy, right? And if white plays solid this way, and you know black gets to press here, white gets one more, you still get this forcing move that pokes at this cut, and you get this which pokes at this cut. So it's still not great for white to play that way. There are other possible follow-ups. Like I said, that black could play here first, or black could just poke here directly. But either way, you see that many of these things are going to impact white's ability to grow comfortably. So this move is an important direction boundary. Now, this being said, this is not the biggest area of the board, or the most urgent area for black to play in. So black is gonna extend here. Here, it becomes hard for white to just sacrifice these stones, because now white has to worry about these. So now the attack has gotten stronger because these stones are de facto weak. So white makes a base here, and then this move that we saw comes back, and now this puts pressure on the corner. Now black is leading by about 10 points on this board here. Remember that there's no komi, but if you look at the board position, right? If we count now, if you look at what we have, this is 0 points because it could be white, could be black, who knows? It was completely unsettled, right? This is about 9 points. This is about 22 points. So 31 points for black. This is about 8 points. So 39 points for black. This is 0 points because again, could be black, could be white, right? And this is maybe about 3 points for black because black has option to make points. Let's say, 44-ish points. White has like 14 points here, and 16 points here, and that's 30. And then 4 points here, that's 44. 34, not 44. I feel like I've dropped 10 points for white somewhere. 14, 16, 30, 34. 22, 30. No, I'm sorry. It is right. White has 34, black has 44, approximately. Let me do this one more time without stuttering. So the points for black are roughly like 3 points here, 9 points here, 22 points here, and 8 points for this capture. Basically. For white, you have about 4 points here, about 14 points here, about 16 points here. So black is up by 10. So now that the white stones are weakened in the corner, white needs to protect them. So white protects actively. White is very unsettled comparatively. White is unsettled, but white has a lot of strength. Right, so like this is one of the things is like black prioritized this massive territory, which gives him this kind of lead. And so a lot of the game a lot of the fight we're seeing on this board is white is struggling to convert the influence into territory. In some ways, this is the grandfather pattern to maybe Cosmic Go, to the Moyo Go at the very least. Because when you make a big Moyo, you're saying, look at all my influence. Now, I have to make points out of it. So this is the same idea. it's a little bit different because the moyo, you know, the opponent puts a stone in the middle and then it has to live. So now that we've played this, white finally gets to come back and cut. Now this cut makes it harder for these stones to count as thickness. And it makes it hard for this stone to grow in strength, unbounded. At some point, it's probably gonna, it might need to turn around and capture this to be alive. So now black's shape is actually pretty thin comparatively. Now, I don't know if you remember how I was talking about this being the bare minimum for the Joseki. But this Shusaku decides now's a good time to continue the Joseki because it's a way to get a base as well. So we get this exchange here. We get a cut with an Atari. Then black exchanges this once. Comes back around here. White captures. And black with a nose hit the Tsuji. There's a couple of variations here about what happens if black plays here first and why this works pretty well. This ends up being a kind of interesting sacrifice pattern because the nose hit the Tsuji drives white in this direction. Just because if white plays here, black can play here, and then it's not totally clear liberty-wise what's gonna happen, right? Known as boop. I believe if you're a yeah, I think this was born on Twitch 2 years ago or so. I prefer nose hit the Tsuji, but I have heard boop. Sorry, I'm getting distracted. It is. Well, I don't know how popular it is, but there's at least one streamer who does or did refer to it that way for a while. So, with this exchange here, white has something pretty strong here, right? It's settled, it's alive. This is, of course, still very challenged. And now, with this move, we're beginning to look at this area of the board, saying, how many points can we make? Black comes back here. It's time to start resolving this highly unresolved area. We get a double Atari. Black solves this here. And white comes down here. I need to make an adjustment again. Boom, 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 boom. Holy, oh no, big variations are coming up. I'm gonna have to take a second to check what these variations are. I think there's just big variations from like mistakes that the AI made, mistakes that the players made. So here we were just saying this is beginning to say, can I make a couple points here? 6, 7 points, right? Maybe 10. So it would be nice to do that. Now the bottom left corner has some sequences that begin with B3 for black that make the group not locally alive. This is not a problem as long as white can get out, which with these stones, white is able to get out. So I'm gonna remove this move in a second, but just so you know, black's next move is to actually make it impossible for white to get out. So black is challenging the corner with this position. So let's take a look at the sequences that exist in this corner for a second. These are the ones that I'm very weak at, so I think these are interesting. If black plays here, white can't descend. If you descend, you do this, the liberties are never going to work for you, right? So white is forced to capture. And you have a ko here. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. There's no reason to take the ko here because it's not going to be meaningful. It's just going to make it more difficult. So white gets to play here, and then black plays here. So this is how you challenge the board position. And this is it's hard to live. So yeah, the meaning of that descent over here, I'm gonna come back and put on the board. That's roughly where we are, I think. Yeah. The meaning of this descent is right on the corner. So white plays a move that makes it possible for black to make a ko, but it also prevents the monkey jump. So it is a way that, you know, preserves the corner as much as possible. Black plays on this in this direction. It looks at a2 for the next ko. That's the next guess. So the corner is still, you know, it's potentially alive in ko. Now that we've solved all of this, or, you know, moved further forward and to make the value of the ko much more clear, we're going to defend here, and we're going to put pressure on these 3 stones. If white gets out with k13, they might have to connect. So black is going to continue to just try to make points pretty steadily, and white is going to challenge the area here. This is the AI line here is what I'm not going to show you because it's not very interesting, but the technically the AI wants to burn a whole bunch of tiny bits of agi here before it plays a move anywhere like this one. So we're going to ignore, so I think it's fair to ignore that. This move makes sense from a human perspective in that it's poking at this and working with this shape, so it's fine. Now, the next move by black actually is also a mistake. Connecting, it turns out, is also a 3-point mistake, so just like, you know, mistake for mistake. We're going to show a more active line for defense that the AI is looking at if you prefer to sort of keep Sente and work in a more active way. But this move makes sense, right? And comparing mistake for mistake, in a sense, like the board position doesn't change that much, and black is ahead. So while the AI can look at it as a mistake, we can say that this is a way of keeping the game simple by not changing the board position too much, right? Or not allowing more complications in the board position. So actually, you know what? I don't want to show you this. It's like, it's so different from what we're doing in this game in a couple of ways. Let's just say that if you want to look at the more active line for defense for black instead of the connection, you can look in the SGF and you'll find them. Just because it's sort of I think it'll be a distraction from the flow of the game right now. So once black connects here after this move, white comes back here to threaten. So he's surrounding the stones. Now white continues to also seal, like he's, you know, white is continuing to make this area more and more like potential territory. So it's really a continued effort to convert influence into territory. And black continues to get out and say, well, look, if you play here, I can still play here and it's fine. And this stone challenges, like you have to choose an order of operation. It's not easy. So this is just a simplification. The AI here would want to begin the code but not continue it first, to kind of make this area a little bigger, to kind of give white more to think about, so to speak. Also because if you begin one thing to look at. If you look at this area here, an important thing you do is you get a cutting point that's kind of meaningful. So you get forcing moves in this area that allow you to do more effective reductions. White is continuing to convert the moyo into territory as much as possible. Black is content to work on connecting. So is white. And then black fixes his cutting points here. This is a good shape, but it's not forceful enough. Again, this goes back to at this area of the board, given where we are as far as like the score, the AI would like black to jump here and start reducing this area, because black has ways to drop 6 or 7 points from this area, pretty much in complete sente. But this is not the direction that black is going in for this here. Now at this point we are what? We're at move 128. We're almost, I think we're basically in endgame. And so you'll see the rest of the moves bear the fact it's weird, right? So it's endgame is pretty much when no major group is gonna die. This might still die. This might still die, but these are corners. They don't impact the rest of the board a ton. It's like if they die, it doesn't make a difference for the nearby groups. So there's no knock-on effect from them dying. But we are closing territory here. We are doing those nudges. We are pushing here. And we are nudging as much as we can here. There's not much to say about these moves. They're interesting to look at from a closing perspective, but they're not... It's not so much the middle game contest anymore. This is GF made a mistake. This is white is pushing against white. This is white is pushing against black. And the next move here... This is supposedly a pretty big mistake. Supposedly about 5 points. It was the last chance that black had to take here, or to go at S10, which would have been kind of the sente big decisions to take here. But at this point, after this move, like white is up by half a point. Like the game is even, but you have to realize this being a no komi game, we're in a position where black has lost the first move advantage on this board. And it's good, and now it's going to be hard for black to manage this. Now, white says, I would like to know if I can make life here, because that's a big shift. And black says, how about a ko? Which makes perfect sense, right? Now, before black gets to start the ko, white closes this area of the board. And this is important because if you don't, then this is basically a ko threat factory. Like every time black plays a move here, white has to respond, every time. And white just doesn't have enough ko threats on the board to make up for that otherwise. Never mind the fact that even without the ko, this would just be, a lot of reductions that white doesn't want to deal with. So black is asking if he can squeeze the life out of this group. White says no. We're continuing endgames, getting more points out of this. White is very gently going to ask if he can make some points here by squeezing into this area, right? If he can force black to defend, he can get some strength, but maybe incent it and come back and close this. which would be very nice. Black backs away because black is trying to get multiple directions going. He doesn't want to leave this area open because he would like to make 6 or 7 points. Not a lot, just a couple of points. That's really all he wants out of this board position. And now he's hoping he can get this forcing move in. But white gets to resist once, because it turns out this forcing move doesn't threaten the life of anything. So it is Sente. White does have to respond. And black gets to cut. White turns here with the Atari. This is supposedly, again, a 3-point mistake, according to the AI. And if you look at the AI, it assumes that black is up 1.5 point now, so technically it thinks black is winning. But this ends up being a very safe move, so you can. It's fair to suggest that instead of being a mistake of positional judgment and tactics, this is just a way to stabilize the center left group and to just go, you know what, I'm gonna stick with what I have now, and I think I'm winning this game. So black plays a few forcing moves here, and then here white wants to live and says, let's do this ko for life. Now, this is one of the first times I'm trying to count the ko's. I believe that because this is a 3-move ko for black to win. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This is 16. This is more than I thought. I wrote this wrong in the SGF. No, it's 16, but there's not that many more points, and there's like captures. So I think this is about 5 points per move. So I believe that when black plays here to start the ko, and white says, okay, let's play the ko, it is time for black to find ko threats worth 5 points. If this is how Miyai counting works. I am hoping there are strong players either in chat or in the video or who will watch it on YouTube later and say, that is not how that works, you're wrong. And then I will learn. So we get a first ko threat in the corner. Black gets to take the ko. White says, can I do terrible, terrible things, connect underneath, save these stones? Black says, no. When we play over here, now that we have the other stone, white is going to play just more directly at the shape point, because it's hard for black to get out and make life here. So it's a more direct attack now that this is closed off. White gets to threaten the stones here. And take the ko. Black gets to connect and threaten to live again. And white responds because that's not interesting. White has another threat here to see if he can take. So the here black makes a mistake, but white responds to it, so it's completely okay. What you're looking for is actually, like, black needed to play this move. And let me show you this variation here from it, because this is an interesting sort of point balance adjustment on the board, where it follows that black takes this, black takes the ko, white goes up. This will be a lot of fun to remove these stones. That's gonna be fun and challenging. And then playing here. Now this way, the important reason why this makes sense when you is that black has now more co-threats in here to work with. Right, like you can ask if you can cut off these 2 stones, that's pretty big. You can ask if you can get out, you can ask if you can cut off here. There's now enough things you can do, never mind, you know, possibly making 2 eyes. So this would have been a more active way of playing the game. But that's not the way this went. So, remove this move, this move, this move is here still. Challenges. This is fine, this is fine. The ko was in this position when it was our turn to play. Okay, yes. All right. Almost guaranteed this is the right board position. So instead, black plays this in game move. And then black comes back and takes the ko. Now white gets to come back here. And gets to use this ko threat, just like we saw. Black uses this ko threat internally here. We continue working on these threats. And you will notice, I think, most of these threats you can kind of at least eyeball that they're the same size. Right? Clearly 3 stones, same size. It's interesting to go that to think that this, and this are about the same size, right? As far as ko's on this board, if you're not used to counting ko's. It's time for one more threat. This is a bigger one. And white says, no, actually, I want to finish this ko. Or at least, I want to move further in this direction. And then, of course, because this game just wouldn't be as much fun without this, we get another potential for a ko here, although white refuses. And white closes off here. Black finally comes back and connects these stones. We almost forgot about this, right? It's like there's an Atari here. It seems pretty big. It got bigger and bigger as these stones got like more and more threatened, but there it is. It was actually smaller than all these exchanges. Black comes back here to make a stronger connection. White takes an Atari here. White finishes the shape. We get to ask and press. Wait, hold up. I'm so sorry. I did everything except this. That move was part of the other variation. Ugh. This was like 20 moves. It is very hard to do this. I am not good enough. But it turns out this is important because this variation, the game variation makes no sense if this is captured. So, yeah. So when you undo all of this, remember that this was there as a threat to a cut for this ko fight. Technically, the ko fight is not over yet. Black could recapture, but Yeah, sorry about that. At some point, you know, I have 10 years of, we have 10 years of these reviews. At some point I'll stop screwing it up, right? Now here we are going to threaten 4 stones, and black says, you can have those stones, I want this one. So white takes the stones. And this is the last move we have in the game record. Not because anybody resigns or anything, but that's just all we have. The game record tracks this as being white winning by 9 points. According to the AI on this board position, white is winning by 7. So you can suggest that, you know, black made enough mistakes in the end game to equal about 2 points. But this is it. This is this game. I hope you found it interesting. I'm gonna say the closing remarks for YouTube now. Actually, before I do that, thoughts, questions, concerns, criticisms, ideas, things on this board that looked weird or confusing or not right. So I'm glad. I'm very happy. I am happy that you get something out of this. It is even with my low level, there was a lot of codes. There are longer, bigger codes. I believe the longest game that Shusaku ever played was 328 moves, and I can't remember if it was like 1 big code or like 2 or 3 codes. So that's gonna be. We have to prepare for it. It's in a couple of years, right? Shusaku was older, but yeah. All right, let me put these stones away, and while I put the stones away, we can talk about the Shusaku Study Project and other things. So yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed this because it is a. Didn't know games could have that many moves. I believe. I don't know. I think recently, like in the past year or so, Chochi-kun played a game that had like 400 moves or something like that. It's like something ridiculous because there was like a code that they kept on fighting. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, I mean, games are technically, you know, unlimited in moves that they can have. I don't actually think that there's any rules that say you can only play as many moves as you have stones in the bowl. I think the stones in the bowl are just there because, you know, 180, 181, and then you just, you know, can fill out the entire board that way. But I think that's just symmetry and elegance more than anything else. So yeah, preparing these games, even at like my low level of mastery, is a non-inconsequential amount of work. So I'm glad that you're getting something out of it. I needed to start doing something to actually prepare hosting these SGFs in a way that they will properly be public domain commentary and properly be something that that people can continue to contribute to over time. Because right now, like, well, I mean, I guess I am hosting the files on GitHub now, so that's clearly an option. People can just, you know, edit on GitHub, submit pull requests, change the files, whatever. But I'm gonna see if I can remember this. I can't remember if I had done the pro signatures or the fan. I think I did like the pro signatures. Like this. Okay, let me make the closing remarks for YouTube. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. Leave comments and thoughts in underneath. Subscribe if you want to be notified of more of those, and take a look at the homepage if you want to see how to join the project, because we need more people who are willing to spend hours analyzing these games, because I'm not totally sure I'll be able to do it for 10 years. And like we have we have a couple of active people now every week, and that's fine. I specifically want people who are going to be able to do the synthesis part, like bring all the analysis together from all the people, because that's the part that takes a lot of effort from me.